Welcome to Sinister Tales, where we will share horror and mystery stories just for you. We hope you enjoy your stay here.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sinister Tales. I'm Nox, and tonight I have a few spine-chilling stories just for you. Okay, how is everyone for tonight? All of you are doing fine? I hope all of you are. I know I am. I know it took me a while to upload episode 3, but I've been busy of late, and fortunately, I am now free. Well, for those who are listening at night, you probably want a good fright before you go to bed, but for those who are listening in the mornings, well, as long as you're comfortable, who am I to say what time of the day you should listen to this podcast? Now, without further ado, let us move on to the first tale for the night.
Sinister Tales.
Hello, Nox. I'd like to be called Jazz. As you know, with COVID hitting at a global scale, most governments from all over the world has issued a close-in border and quarantine order. Thus, the term work from home was then coined due to the pandemic. Of course, work from home is incomplete without the use of technological aid such as computers and webcam to see what we and our colleagues are doing. It adds a human touch to it. As my husband is an essential worker, he have to leave house to go to work. I currently have 2 kids and they are of age 2 and 4 respectively. Since they are young and full of energy, naturally, they'd hinder my work. So for the first few months was literal hell. I had to juggle work and family matters at the same time. My boss, fortunately, was very understanding. He gave me lesser workload and passed the rest to my other colleagues equally. After a few months when the restrictions were lifted, I can finally go out and visit my parents to drop off my kids as I continued to work alone. It wasn't all that bad when my kids were around. My boss would sometimes entertain my kids whilst we were having a Zoom meeting. He talked to them at length and soon developed a wholesome connection between them. Before I continue on, let me explain the layout of my room. I would often hold a Zoom meeting in my master bedroom. The laptop would be facing me and behind me was a door to the room. Across the door would be the kids' room. You'd be able to see the windows, curtains and a portion of my kids' bed from the webcam. So my kids would sometimes not enter my room but be in their room playing and talking to each other. When they know that I'm having a Zoom meeting, sometimes they gather at that spot where the webcam can see the portion of the bed and just wave to my boss and colleagues. And they've all gotten used to this. So it's pretty wholesome, I would say. So this thing has been routine, and when the restrictions were lifted, of course there was no one at home to do that anymore. I wasn't used to the silence at the beginning, since I've gotten used to the rowdy household when my children were making noises. As a parent, noisy kids at home are norm, and if they ever go silent, you better run and check up on them, because something must have gone down. Anyway, to cut the story short, I was having a Zoom meeting with my boss and discussing with him some important details when I noticed his eyes would be fixated on a certain part of the screen. He would squint and go for a closer look before backing up quickly, and he would repeat this process a few times. Thinking he might be viewing a different document or screen, I ignored it and continued to pitch my ideas to him. But all this while I was presenting ideas to him, he kept doing the same thing over and over again, until finally he gave a very bright smile and waved enthusiastically at the screen. So imagine me presenting ideas to him. I stopped for a while. I was stunned. Who was he waving to? Then he began to say, "Hey, Jess, why not bring your kids over here? I want to talk to them for a while, if you don't mind." Without much thinking, my mind went to autopilot mode and agreed. As I placed down my earpiece, I stood up from my chair and was about to turn around when I noticed that the house was silent. Thinking that, oh, my kids are up to no good again, I was about to walk out of my bedroom when it finally struck me. Wait, my kids are... they're not here. I dropped them off at my parents' place. So I stopped walking out of my room and quickly closed the door. Feeling my heart beating quickly, I went back to my desk and carried my laptop and plopped it on my bed where I can face the door. As I sat down, I was about to put on back the earpiece when I realized I forgot to lock the door and proceeded to do everything in a rush. When I finally got back to my laptop, my boss asked, "Jess, what happened? Why did you close the door on your kid? She was just about to enter the room when you shut the door. Poor thing. Must be feeling lonely out there." I was screaming in my mind, why did my boss have to give such a vivid explanation? I told my boss the truth. "Boss, you know that my kids, they are not at home right now? None of them are. I dropped them off at my parents' place early this morning. I'm home alone." When my boss heard this, his face went pale and just managed to say, "Oh no." Moments later, I heard my doorknob turning as if someone was right at the door trying to get in. But since I locked my door, it couldn't enter. For the next several hours, I sat in my room watching the doorknob kept turning and turning. When it finally stopped, I thought that perhaps it got bored, but I was clever. I will not open that door. Who knows, when I open that door, that thing is just waiting for me. So I just sat in my room, doing nothing and thinking of my next plan of action. And as time passed, I began to relax a little. The second I relaxed a little, somehow that little bugger knows, it probably sensed that I was relaxed, and then it began to turn the doorknob again. I then get anxious and continue to watch the door again. That day, my boss gave me an off day from work due to that incident. As I said, he's a very understanding boss, and I'm very grateful for him. He may not know how to help me in that situation, but at least him understanding and believing my story was good enough. My subsequent Zoom meetings were no longer held at my house alone. I would drop off my kids and then proceeded to enter my parents' place, where I will work there instead. Until this day, I have this question. Who was the girl that my boss saw at my kids' room? And what was turning my doorknob when I'm home alone?
Sinister Tales.
Okay, that was actually kind of creepy if you think about it, The female goes over there, just for the boss to see, and then the boss just wave at the so-called kid, and, maybe the ghost wave back at him. She never mentioned this, of course, but I can probably imagine that the ghost was waving at the boss. That's why he waved back as well. So it's kind of creepy. And the fact that the boss saw the ghost was about to enter the room, but then Jazz over here shut the door on it. That also adds to the creepiness of the entire situation, because the ghost was about to enter the room, and if she had been any slower, who knows what might happen. But the more important question is, what about her kids? Does the ghost disturb her kids when they're asleep at night? Because at the end of the day, they have to go back to their house, right? So, does the ghost disturb the kids when they're asleep? Oh man, I don't know. Hopefully she gets the help she needs to get rid of it. But at the end of the day, this is just a simple tale for entertainment purposes only. Who knows whether it's real or not? Well, let us move on to the next tale, shall we? This story comes from Rachel. She says, "Hi Knox, this happened back in 2005. Back then, I just married to the man that I love, and we recently had just bought a house. Our home is located on the 11th floor, and from our living room, we can always see a beautiful park and a playground nearby. it will always be filled with life when the children play during the day. However, at night, I wouldn't think that the playground could be creepy. It was one fateful night when I was just cleaning up the living room. My husband and I had just finished viewing a show on our DVD player. We had snacks and drinks to complement it as well. After the show ended, we cleaned up after our mess, and after which I decided to look out the window. I was enjoying the cool night's breeze when I looked over the beautiful scenery of the park. It was then something caught my eye. I saw what seemed to be a young girl sitting on the swing at the playground all by herself. I looked around to see if there are any parents or guardians to supervise her, but I couldn't see any adults. However, I thought that perhaps the reason why I couldn't see any adults was due to the fact that the playground wasn't well lit enough and that there might be adults nearby. It was just that I couldn't see because it was dark. I convinced myself that that might be the case. But I called my husband anyway and said, "Honey, can you come over?" And he comes over. "Look, that girl is all by herself, sitting on the swing. Poor thing." "Huh? What girl?" "There, look." "Yeah, I see the swing, but I don't see any girl nearby." "What? No way. She's right there." "Honey, don't try and scare me. She's right there, right?" Babe, I swear, I do not see any girl. The swing is moving, yes, but I reckon it's just the wind. Honey, stop playing around. She's... When I converse with my husband, I looked at him, and each time I say that she's there, I will look back at the girl and point it out to her. I did that a couple of times, looking towards my husband and to the girl and to my husband and to the girl. And when I looked back at the girl to point out one last time, she was gone. She's gone? Well, I don't know what you saw, but I guess by the time I came back, she's gone. I glared at my husband, but refused to say anything. My mind was clouded with rage, but I didn't want to say anything that I might regret later on. I just held my anger and continued to look outside the window, but I didn't look at the playground. When my husband left, I continued to stay and look at the scenery, but I didn't look at the playground this time. However, I couldn't help but have this urge to look over the playground one last time. It was something I couldn't resist. It felt like something was calling me over. I knew that it would be a bad idea, but I couldn't help. So I looked over, and this time I saw the girl playing on the swing. Puzzled as to how she could have disappeared and appeared that fast, I thought perhaps she went to some other area of the playground that I couldn't see. I kept thinking positive all this while, but then she stopped swinging. I then noticed she slowly looked up. I thought perhaps she was looking at the night sky. Not that there was much stars to begin with. I then noticed that she wasn't exactly looking at the night sky. It felt like she was looking directly at me. I shook my head. No way. There's no way she would look at a single person on the 11th floor. So after the cleanup, we went to our bed. Our bedroom has a window at the far left side if you're standing at the door. We have curtains as well, but we often don't draw the curtains since we felt like there wasn't any need to. So we slept, and some time passed and I woke up in the middle of the night. I checked my clock, thinking that it was time to get up to prepare my husband his breakfast and the stuff he needs before he heads to work. But when I looked at the clock, it was 2:13 a.m. I slumped back to bed and slowly drifted to sleep. Then something happened. I was half asleep, but I couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. Was it from my dream, or was it in real life? I forgot what I was dreaming, but then when I listened in on the sound more carefully, I realized it came from real life. So I opened a fraction of my eyes and sat up on my bed. I wasn't groggy then when I sat up because I was very curious on where the sound was coming from and what might cause it at this hour. I began to scan my surroundings. So from my bed, the main door to our room is located on the left side, and I started scanning from left to right. So as my eyes panned from left and then slowly turning right, oh boy, That night, I should have woken my husband up as well and informed him of the noise. Because when I slowly panned from left, slowly going to right, what I saw was straight out of a horror film. Remember the young lady that I saw that was playing on the swing? Somehow, she was right outside my window. How? How can she be there? We are located on the 11th floor, and from where she's standing, there is no floor for her to stand. Her eyes were wide and scary. She was smiling. That's not the creepy part. That was the most creepy part. She wasn't using her hands to knock the window. No, she was using her forehead. I screamed. My husband woke up immediately and sat up straight. What's wrong? What happened? Honey, just now, outside, I saw the lady that was playing at a swing at a playground outside of our window. She's using her head to knock on our window. Huh? What are you... This is the 11th floor, babe. How could anyone stand outside our window? Honey, I think there was a ghost. Please, could you draw the curtains for me? My husband couldn't believe what he was hearing, but seeing that I was in distress, he agreed and drew the curtains. I wrapped myself in a blanket and cuddled with my husband as he stroked my hair to sleep. Oh, there's this golden rule in Southeast Asia where we say if you witness or experience anything out of the ordinary or something that doesn't make sense, you are not supposed to acknowledge or point it out. Say, for example, you saw a white cloth or dress flying from tree to tree. It's late night, you're alone, perhaps you might be with your friends or family. You're supposed to just keep walking and don't say anything. Don't point out and say, I wonder what that white cloth was all about. This rule came about because every single time someone points out or acknowledge the strange encounter, the ghost would follow them wherever they go. Worse is they follow them back home and then begin haunting every single family member that's in the house. Usually they will try and haunt any member of the family that are alone in the house. Usually the hauntings would consist of a simple moving of objects, or perhaps they will hear footsteps in the house, or sometimes they will hear laughter, or someone crying, in the house when there's no one that was crying. And sometimes they would see what seems to be their loved one passing by their bedroom or somewhere, in their peripheral vision. They would see, hey, oh, look, that's mom. I thought she went out, to buy groceries or something. And then when they go and check around the house, and they find out that they actually are alone, you know, that's another one. Another is the ghosts would try to mimic the voice of their loved ones. So they would call out to them, and then they would come out of the room or wherever they were, and they would look around the house and find that there is no one in the house as well, which spooks them. So yeah, and it could get even more, how do I say, worse or aggressive, where they would show themselves to any of the family members. Perhaps late night, you want to go to the washroom, or perhaps you want to get a glass of water. And when you go out, maybe you pass by a certain room or the living room or something like that, and then you see that maybe in the corner that you saw what seemed to be like a lady in white, for example, her hair, all the way down, staring at you. So yeah, these are the typical hauntings that could happen in the house if they ever follow you back. But going back to the, not acknowledging the ghost, you're supposed to pretend like you didn't see anything or hear anything and just go on about your way. There's a couple of ways, that a ghost can attract your attention. It's not easy to ignore them just like that. Sometimes it could be as simple as hearing animal noises. For example, you might hear a duck, quacking in the distance, and you'll be thinking like, huh, Duck quacking. I don't recall having a duck near my residential area, and so your area best. If there is no duck around your area, yeah, it might be the ghost trying to catch your attention so that you can point it out or acknowledge it. Well, of course, the question then will be, why do the ghosts want to attract your attention if they're gonna follow you anyway? Uh, I mean, I'm not really a ghost. I wouldn't really know, but this is what I hear from previous people that were before me, and they always, this type of superstition or rules are being passed down from one generation to the other. So we just take it in just like that. We hardly question it, or rather, we do question it, but we don't really have the answers. But so far, you know, following the rules don't really land you in hot water. So we normally just follow. There are some people who firsthand experience some of these things. So when we listen, we're like, oh, okay, I guess it's true. Some of them are true. So yeah, basically, do not acknowledge the presence and don't point out, just ignore and be on your way. Now, the reason why I share this is because our friend here acknowledged its presence. I understand that it's normal sometimes when you see certain weird stuff, you point it out. It may seem normal at first, but logically speaking, no one would hang out around past midnight alone, okay? Alone at the playground playing the swing. No one does that. At least not in Southeast Asia, okay? We past midnight alone, you see a lady playing a swing and you're like, okay, that's a red flag. Okay, so when she points it out to her husband, and then the husband comes over and take a look, he didn't see anything. Thinking that her husband was playing daft, she insisted that there was a lady at the swing, but her husband was being honest, and he couldn't see anything. At this point, she should have stopped and kept mum, but instead kept going on until I think the ghost definitely heard their conversation, which was why it looked up. Then again, once you point out only once, just once, there is a possibility that the ghost would follow or disturb you. Of course, that's in Southeast Asia. I was wondering if anyone outside of Southeast Asia have similar rules when it comes to encountering paranormal activities. I have quite a number of lists on the do's and don'ts when you encounter a paranormal event, but maybe the subsequent episodes I will share with them. But if any of you have anything interesting rule, please do share at the comments below. Right. This next story comes from Willie. He says, I went to Japan for my school's field trip. We went there for a concert band exchange program for 1 week. We also participated in their competition. The first time we checked into their hotel, we didn't experience anything weird. It wasn't until the third day that some of us have began experiencing something odd. It was subtle at first, but then it grew to become aggressive and noticeable. But not all the rooms experienced it. Since we have both guys and girls in our concert band, the males and females were split into two different floors. I think, if I recall, the males would stay on the 7th floor, whilst the females will be on the 9th floor. Throughout our entire time there, the females did not experience anything strange. The males, however, would beg to differ. However, it was only a select few rooms that would experience it. My room in particular did not experience anything weird. Alright, now let's listen to Willie's tale.
Sinister Tales.
Now, Willie didn't experience anything weird, but the other boys, however, have things to tell. One of his junior was taking a shower, did so when his partner wasn't in the room. His partner had went down to the other rooms to chat with the other guys. So let's give this junior a name so that we can differentiate him easily. So his junior Ed, not his real name, was showering alone in the hotel room when he heard the main door open and then closed. He was surprised that his partner, Zach, came back and called out to him. Zach, are you back? I thought you said you're gonna stay at the room a little longer. Did you forget something? No response. So Ed thought Zack couldn't hear what he just said due to the echo and whatnot. So Ed quickly finished up, dried himself, and went out covering himself with a towel. Zack, oi! Where are you? Ed turned towards the bedside, but there was no one. The room was small, it wasn't that big. When you exit out of the toilet, the right side is the main door. In front of the toilet was the wardrobe. And if you turn your head to the left, there were 2 super single beds, and across the bed was a television. And in the far left side, you will see a large window panel. So Ed didn't need to take his time to find out Zack wasn't there. Puzzled at this development, he thought maybe he heard the other room's main door opened and closed. So he shrugged it off and proceeded to wear his clothes. That was one example of what some other rooms would experience too. When they're alone and not paying attention to anything, the main door would open and close. The person inside would think their partner had returned, but when they checked, no one entered the room. Some people would complain about having their stuff move around when they have placed at a certain spot. They'd accuse the other party of moving, but they would always deny. It took a bit of time and convincing before they all realized their partner was telling the truth all along. There are also times where they hear the television turn on and off by itself. Sometimes when they're on their bed, they'd hear the shower head turn on and off as well. These were all minor disturbances. It was evident though that it was getting out of hand the longer we stayed there. Things started to really pick up when it decided that it should show itself to the guys. The previous junior Ed experienced this firsthand. His room was the furthest from me, and moving down from there were the other boys. One night as he was sleeping, he woke up in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m. When he looked around the room, he saw a lady in white dress with long, unkempt hair standing by the window. He quickly got up and shook Zack awake.
Oi, Zack! Oi! Oi, wake up! Oi, Zack! Oi!
What? Zack, hey, come. Let's go to the other guy's room and we sleep there. Papa, what time is it? It's 3 a.m. 3 a.m.? No, you go lah. I'm staying here. I'm not gonna go. Hey, but we should really go. No, I don't want. If you want, you go alone. I'm sleeping here. It's 3 a.m. You crazy. But Zack, I saw something. That's your imagination. You must be dreaming. Don't disturb me. Go. Ed, who couldn't convince Zack to move to the other room, decided that if he doesn't want to go, he might as well just leave him alone. He was, of course, reluctant, but what was there to do? He didn't want to be disturbed by the spirit. So, Zack quickly ran up to the lights, turned it on, and called the room next door. When they finally picked up, he told them if he could come over to sleep for a while, as there was a cockroach in his room. The guys in the other room agreed, and Ed moved to sleep over. On the way out, Zack told Ed to turn off the lights. Hey, don't forget, turn off the lights. Zack, you sure? Because, yes, it's 3 a.m, I want to sleep, I don't know why, you're so scared, okay, it's just, you're probably just dreaming lah, just, you know what, turn off the lights, okay? Just do me a favor here. Okay, fine, I'll do it. Ed had no choice but to oblige. In his heart, Ed hoped that whatever thing that woke him up earlier would also wake Zack up, and then he had no choice but to believe Ed. So when Ed arrived at the other guy's room, he was about to settle down and they were all having a chat on where is Zack and why he didn't follow Ed as well. So they were talking for a few minutes until they heard Zack screaming at the top of his voice from the other room. Ed and 2 other guys quickly rushed to go and see what happened to Zack, but unfortunately, when Ed left the room, he did not bring the key to his room. Cursing at himself for being negligent, he knew Zack was screaming because of what he saw earlier. One of the boys ran to the teacher's room for help. The other went back to their room to call room service to get a spare key to open up the room. Ed decided to continue knocking the door, calling out to Zack, but he wouldn't open up. Zach? Zach? Oi, Zach! Open up! Zach! Zach didn't open up, but instead, he continued screaming. Minutes passed and soon the teacher came by and asked what's wrong. Ed just shrugged and feigned ignorance, claiming he didn't know why Zach was screaming. The screaming eventually stopped and the hotel staff came by. They opened up the door, and when they all entered the room, it was pitch black. The teacher on the lights to the room and saw Zach cowering in a corner, curling into a ball with a blanket over his head. The teacher approached Zach and calmed him down. Zach couldn't speak no matter how much the teacher asked. The boys outside thanked the hotel staff before they left. Ed entered the room and persuaded Zach to at least grab their stuff to move to the other boy's room that he was staying. It took a while, but soon Zach managed to agree and moved to the other room. The teacher was confused at that point, but he didn't ask too much, thinking that perhaps what Zach needed was companionship after whatever that happened. When morning comes, the teacher came to Ed and asked, "So what happened to Zach? Did he say anything to you?" Ed then told the teacher everything. The teacher didn't comment the entire time. He just listened intently, though he found it hard to believe, but if the story was true, the teacher couldn't take any risk. "Okay, I see. I find it a bit hard to believe your story, but what is clear is that Zach should not be alone in this time. So, I think for now, you and Zach shouldn't go back to your room, but instead go back to the previous room that you were staying. The more the merrier." Ed agreed, and for the next couple of nights, they stayed at the other boy's room. By this time as well, everyone had heard what happened to Zach. Some believed the story to be true, and others just scoffed and say that perhaps Zach was hallucinating or was just seeking some attention. However, those that were there yesterday vouched that Zach couldn't have done that to get mere attention. He was too scared. It felt too real for it to be a simple hallucination or attention seeking. That night, as the four decided to go to sleep, Zach woke up in the middle of the night, waking everybody up. Guys, hey, wake up, wake up. Listen, you hear that? What? What are we supposed to? Shh. Just listen. You hear that? We couldn't hear anything at first, and we all thought Zach might have gone mad after yesterday's incident. But as we listened carefully this time, it was faint, but otherwise audible. Zach, 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 Zach. It was calling Zach's name. We all freaked out. It came from Ed's and Zach's previous room. It was then evident that whatever thing that was disturbing Zach was not going to end there. Zach then shivered with fright again. He exclaimed that he couldn't sleep because he felt like he was going to be haunted by the same lady again. Ed then suggested why not they all move to the other boy's room, which was right next door. They all agreed and rang up the room next door. The boys next door agreed, and they all packed their stuff and moved to the other room. Though there were only 2 beds, but the boys managed to find a place to sleep. Some boys slept as 2 or 3 in one bed since they were skinny enough. Others slept on the floor or on the couch. That night, they slept without much problem. The final night passed without any issue, and I was very thankful for it as well. Any more trouble and perhaps they'll be moving to my room. That'll be a spectacle to witness 8 boys cramped in one room. Anyway, when morning came, we all packed our bags and instruments. We then proceeded to load everything to our bus. Before we left, the receptionist asked our teacher if any of the boys played a prank on the receptionist earlier this morning. When the teacher asked why, he said when the receptionist was doing the morning call for all of the rooms, rooms 712 and 713, the receptionist claimed that someone answered the phone call but did not bother responding. Instead, they only heard a low and growling voice at the end of the line. The receptionist probably thought that the boys were trying to play a prank and just laughed it off. When the teacher came to us, he asked, "Did any of you boys went back to your room to answer the morning call?" No, sir, we all stayed at room 714. Huh, okay. We all stood in silence. Who would be crazy enough to go back to room 712 and 713 just to answer morning call. All of them stayed at 714. Was it the lady in white that answered the phone? Who knows? Until this day, it remains a mystery. Now, in the story, Willie didn't give the numbers 712, 713, and 714, but I felt that I should just add them in, just to give a better illustration on which room was affected by all these encounters. In any case, I think the spirit didn't like it when the boys entered and stayed in its room, so he decided to chase them out. Or perhaps that room might be stigmatized. Maybe it was due to homicide or suicide, or whatever death that happened in that room. Oftentimes, the spirit might not be able to rest in peace and thus roam in its last place of death, tormented by the tragedy that it faced. What's that? You do not know what stigmatized property means? Well, in real estate, it basically means that the buyers or tenants may shun for reasons that are unrelated to its physical condition or features. There are a number of stigma, and these could range from criminal, death, strange phenomena stigma. But of course, many of you are interested in death, criminal, and strange phenomena stigma, aren't you? Well, this is the Sinister Tales. It just so happened I have a story about stigmatized property. Come now, let us listen in on this tale.
Sinister Tales.
This story comes from KS. It reads, I bought a private house somewhere in the western part of Singapore. At that point in time, I had recently married to the love of my life. We were searching for a lovely house and found one which was gorgeous and not to mention very affordable. It was so affordable that I was quite puzzled as to why the price was lower than the market value. My real estate agent told me about everything. Apparently, there was a lady that decided to extinguish herself due to the depression that she faced because of a husband that cheated on her with another woman. Knowing she couldn't save her marriage and she couldn't take the stress, she decided to end it all. There were numerous buyers that bought the place, but many would soon sell it off after a month or two due to the hauntings that they experienced. Among the stories were that whenever people walked past the house in the middle of the night and they happened to look at the windows of the house, they would often see a lady standing looking out at their direction. Other times, the main door would open and close by itself, which was odd since the door was supposed to be locked and the keys were with the property agent. The owners would oftentimes tell the property agent that they would hear footsteps in the house, and some have seen horrible sightings of a lady in white dress. My wife and I looked at each other after the property agent told us the story. Both of us didn't have much reaction and bought the place anyway. In this modern day and age, I treat superstitions and ghosts as mere obstacles for progress. My wife and I are very practical and logical person. So the thought of spirits and whatnot, we treat them as stories meant to scare people into obedience. I mean, having a house that was priced lower than usual was definitely a steal. Soon, we moved into the house and we were over the moon at our purchase. We settled down after unpacking and decorating our house after 2 weeks. We thought we should do a housewarming party and wanted to invite the neighbors over. We thought that we should get to know our neighbors and make a friendly relations with them. You never know when you might need their help with something. As my wife and I went up to one of our neighbor next door, we greeted them and we told them that we were new in the neighborhood. Oh, is it now? Well, where do you live? Surely it's not in the house beside me, right? Huh? Oh, we live here actually. What? Well, It's good to know you. What? Why? Why are you saying as if we're gonna go away? Oh, you will. They all will. I was taken aback by his response and felt somewhat offended. Does he think I believe in such rabble? I left, not knowing if I should still invite him to my housewarming party or not. I went up to every neighbor in the area and all of them had the same reaction. By this point, I was thinking if I made the right choice to purchase the house. But I still maintained a positive outlook and said that if nothing happens within the first 2 months, I'm going to show them that there's nothing to be afraid of. Then, I have no reason to move out. I also proved them wrong and shoved it in their face. 1 month passed and nothing happened. 2 months passed and nothing happened. I was feeling elated and told my wife about it. We both laughed at our neighbors and the people who believe in strange tales. Truly, they were not open-minded and progressive like us, was what we thought. I went about the neighborhood once more proclaiming that it has been 2 months and nothing had happened. So I invited them for housewarming again. The response wasn't great, but it was better than the first time I invited. The neighbor next door still refused to come for my housewarming party. I gave him a little smirk for believing in such things. The housewarming went by without issue. We were approaching the end of the 3rd month by then. So one day I was going home from work and arrived outside of the gates to my house. I then saw my wife on the balcony. I smiled and waved enthusiastically at her, but she didn't wave back. Thinking that she might have not seen me, I shouted her name and waved at her again. No response. Puzzled as what got her attention, I looked around. But the neighborhood was quiet and not a single soul was out and about. So I looked back at her at the balcony and I was about to call her again, but she disappeared. So I thought perhaps she has moved into the bedroom. Moments later, I heard, "Hey babe." "Oi, what the hell?" I yelped. My wife walked up beside me. I was speechless. "Wait, what you... but you're... huh?" Nothing coherent came out. "What is it, babe? Who were you waving to?" "Don't tell me you're gonna say you saw a lady at the window. Please, 3 months has passed and we both know there's no such thing. Now you want to play pranks on me? Okay, you're gonna have to do a lot better than that to scare me." I didn't have anything to say to her. I didn't want to look stupid in front of her by believing in paranormal events. Maybe I was tired and was seeing things. Yes, let's go with that, I thought to myself. Subsequent nights when I was sleeping, I heard footsteps coming from the living room. Our house was about 2 stories high. The bedrooms were on the 2nd floor, so when I heard footsteps, I immediately woke my wife up and told her that I'm hearing footsteps in the living room. Her eyes widened and said to call the police immediately. It might be a robber that came to steal our valuables. I told my wife to go ahead and call the police whilst I go out and see where the so-called robbers were. As I left the room, I tiptoed all the way to the railing. From there, I can overlook the living room and the main door from the 2nd floor. However, I was indeed hearing footsteps, but the problem was, there was no one. I thought to myself, maybe the robbers were in the kitchen. Fearing the robber may be armed, I didn't proceed to check the kitchen alone. I went back inside the room and locked the door. This way, if the robbers want to get in, they won't be able to. My wife called the police whilst I did all that. The footsteps eventually subsided and we thought perhaps they had left. The police arrived within minutes and we went to the main door to receive them. "Good evening, ma'am, sir. We received a call from this residential area that there might be a possible break-in. Are the 2 of you alright?" Yes, please come in and investigate." One of the first policemen went around the perimeter of the house to look for possible entry points and to see if there's any possible break-ins. The other policeman interviewed us at a safe spot. The police that was going around the perimeter of our house eventually came back for his partner. He wanted to check if he had finished taking down our statements. It took about 6 to 8 minutes before his partner finally finished taking down our statements. Then, Both of them entered our house and did a full sweep to check for any perpetrators that may be hiding within our house. We were waiting for a few minutes before they come back. Sir, we have no sign of tampering or any force to break into the house. What? No, that's impossible. We both heard the footsteps, you know. I do apologize, but we did check every possible entry point. If you want, why not you give us another round of checks? Yes, please do. They did another full sweep of the house, and when they came back to us, nothing. Ma'am, sir, we are 100% sure that there was no one inside your house the entire time. No footprints or any marks on the window or doors to suggest any force of entry. We also investigated around the vicinity of your house and we found nothing. Furthermore, we also went through the items with you, right? You know, that may have been stolen, but you claim none, correct? Yes. But I really heard the footsteps. My wife and I heard it. Well, nothing was stolen, and there was no sign of force of entry. There's nothing much for us to go on about. But if you still experience such things again, please don't hesitate to call us. Better safe than sorry. Okay, thanks. After they left, my wife and I did our own checks, and true enough, nothing in the house seems off. In fact, if their intent was to steal something, well, nothing was stolen. So what was their motive to enter our house? The both of us discussed some more about how strange of an event we encountered and what could have caused the footsteps noise in our house. Could it have been the leaf that rustled loudly that resembled the footsteps? We were listing the possible sounds that resembled similar to footsteps and creating theories along the way. However, none of them was satisfactory enough. Feeling frustrated, we decided it was not worth our time to delve further and decided to go back to sleep. Again, the sound of footsteps appeared again. I tried to tap my wife's shoulder, but before I could do that, she immediately grabbed my hand. It was as if she knew I was going to inform her. She looked at me and nodded. She didn't have to say anything, but from her expression, she was saying, "Yes, I hear it too." She called the police whilst I quickly locked the door again. I was sure perhaps the intent of the perpetrator was to harm us instead of stealing our valuables. Maybe they didn't find anything of interest in the house and was about to enter our room when they saw the police. Thus, they either escape or hide, and now they're coming back for round 2 after the police have left. That was my theory, yes. Again, before the police arrived, the footsteps disappeared, so when the police were knocking on the door, I quickly ran down and received them. It was the same policeman. I told them after they left, the sound of footsteps appeared again. The police escorted us to somewhere safe and they did another full sweep of the house. It took them about 40 to 50 minutes before they finally came back to us. "Sir, we checked everywhere again and there's no sign of possible force of entry. Furthermore, there was no one that hid anywhere at your home." I'll tell you what. He leaned in and whispered, although low, but maybe we might have missed a spot. I'm saying it's a low possibility because we did our due diligence, but maybe we might have missed a spot. Okay, so here's the plan. I'll park my car further down the road and we'll station ourselves somewhere nearby. Somewhere where the perpetrator cannot see us. And if they come back for round 3, we'll swoop in on him. Okay? I nodded and agreed to the plan. So they left and my wife and I decided to head back to bed again. This time, we weren't sleeping. We waited for the footsteps again in case they reappear. Guess what? True enough, they did. I called the police who gave me his number. Seconds later, I heard footsteps from outside trying to move into my house. It was the policeman, I know that, because I gave them the key to the house for easier access. As I heard them enter, I too left the room to see if I could be of any assistance to them. However, I saw the policeman just running around my house without any proper direction. They did another full sweep and soon they came to me and said, sir? We found nothing. Just as soon as you said you heard footsteps, we swooped in. But we found nothing. I looked at my wife and she looked back at me. We were lost for words. Ma'am, sir, you know, this isn't my first time dealing with such things. Wait, it's not? Yes, it's not. Usually these type of things, I would suggest for you to look for some traditional method, you know, to cleanse this house. I was stunned. An officer of this day and age would suggest to use traditional method? Of course I understood what he meant. He basically asked me to call a priest or some spiritual healer or ustaz to come and recite a few prayers to cleanse the house. However, I still did not believe in such method to be effective because it was illogical and I don't believe in such things. But with the things that were going on lately, I'm beginning to be more inclined to believe that the house's hauntings might be true. My wife, of course, refused to believe until the very end. So we thanked the policemen and they left us again. When my wife and I head back to bed, we heard the footsteps again. Annoyed, my wife got out of bed and marched to the bedroom door. I quickly got up and ran after her. As she was about to reach for the doorknob, I stopped her. What are you doing? I'm ending this once and for all. If those incompetent policemen couldn't handle something so simple, it's time we step in. I don't think that's a good idea. What? You suggest we call the policemen again? Please. No, I mean, I think the rumors about this house might be true. Oh, please. Don't tell me my husband has fallen to those pesky rumors. Are you daft? She brushed my hand away and proceeded to open the door. She marched to the stairs and descended the flight of stairs and into the living room. Then I heard her moving towards the kitchen. I was still in the bedroom and didn't follow her. Something inside me told me to not proceed to where she was going. Then I heard my wife screamed. Panicking, I quickly ran after her. I went to the living room but didn't find her there, so I proceeded to check for her inside the kitchen. Then I found her, standing inside the kitchen alone in the dark. Her back was facing against me. Babe, are you okay? What did you find? She didn't respond. I slowly approached her, but each step I took made my hair stand on end, as if it was a red flag to get near her. Babe, come now, let's go back to bed. Come on. I slowly inched my way closer and closer to her until I was about an arm's length. I grabbed her shoulder gently and she slowly turned around. What she said next was something I could not forget. I'm not your wife. She is no more. I'm here now. I recoiled in shock, stumbling backwards, almost falling on my rear. Her voice and the laughter was very creepy. This was not my wife. It was as if something else resides within her. Was this what they call possession? I quickly got up and slowly backed away. I didn't know what to do or who to call. No one I knew would be awake at this timing, and even if they were to be awake, none would believe what I have to say. My wife then started to close in on me one step at a time. Fear started to grip my heart and I quickly ran up the stairs into my room. I could hear the footsteps behind me got increasingly faster as well. I knew she was chasing me. I quickly got into the room and I turned around and closed the door. As I was closing, she was already on the second floor and gunning towards the bedroom. I slammed and locked the door. The banging of the door lasted about 15 minutes. I pressed my body against the door for fear that if she hit any harder, the door might just burst open. So I pressed my body against the door, bracing her constant banging. Eventually, it was quiet. The sudden tranquility, funny enough, wasn't welcoming. It was eerie. Then, I heard her from outside. "Babe, it's me. I don't know what's going on. Help. Please open the door." I started to lower my guard. Has my wife perhaps gone back to normal? I didn't know what to do or think. "Babe, is that really you?" "Yes, I didn't know what happened. I saw something scary, and then she came at me." "Where? How did I get here?" I let out a sigh of relief. She really was back. Whatever that thing that possessed her must have felt that it was futile banging on the door and left her body. So I unlocked the door and slowly opened it when I felt a sudden wave of uneasiness overcoming me. What is it now? Why am I feeling this way? It's just my wife now. Relax. Okay, it's my wife. I kept telling myself that over and over again. However, I just couldn't shake off this feeling. As I opened the door slowly, bit by bit, I peered into the gap just enough to peek outside to see where my wife was. I don't see my wife outside. Where was she? Where could she have gone to? And then suddenly, she slammed her face into the gap. Her face met with mine.
Hurry up and open the door, babe. Hurry up and open the door.
I recoiled in terror, but I didn't let go of the doorknob. Now, I couldn't close the door shut due to her face jamming into the gap. So I smacked her head away. She laughed and started to sing something very creepy, all the while saying to open the door every now and then. I continued to smack her face before she finally moved away. I can then finally shut the door, and for the next 2 hours was literal hell. I just sat there by the door as I listened to all manner of horror that was going on outside. I would hear her sobbing, laughing, giggling, growling, and footsteps pacing up and down the hallway. Sometimes that thing would disguise as my wife's voice again just to get me to lower my guard, but I didn't fall for it this time. All I could think of was when would this nightmare end? I continued to sit there until dawn broke. The activity outside by then had stopped. It was quiet. But I didn't open the door to check again still. I was, however, exhausted and could feel my eyelids grew heavier by the second. I tried my best to stay awake in case there was new development that may occur later. However, I could not resist anymore and fell asleep. Next thing I knew, I felt someone tapping on my shoulder. I slowly opened a fraction of my eye. I was feeling somewhat well rested. Somewhat. And then the realization of what happened last night flashed before my mind, and I quickly sat up straight. I looked up and my wife gave me a puzzled look. I stood up and backed away in a corner. "Stay back! Give me my wife back!" I screamed. "Hey, what? It's me. What are you talking about?" I was in hysteria. I couldn't think straight and kept shouting at her. She came close to me, but I put up my hands in defensive mode in case that thing wanted to strangle me. But my wife came close and stroked my face, and she said, "You idiot, it's me." It took some time, but in the end I was convinced that she was indeed my wife. She reassured me some more and I finally calmed down after a while. We sat down and discussed the events that happened last night. Apparently, as my wife was going down the stairs, she heard the mysterious footsteps retreat into the kitchen. That's when she followed it and saw a lady in white dress in the kitchen. However, she wasn't standing on the floor. No. She was standing on the ceiling, hanging like a bat. Her feet was on top of the ceiling and her head was facing towards the floor. Her hair was also going down as well. That's how she was. My wife screamed and it flew straight to my wife before she blacked out. And that's where I came in. The rest was, as they say, history. Of course, I do not live there anymore. I've already sold it off. If you ask me if there are any more potential buyers, I believe there will be. But I hope the potential buyers will stay away from that house. It's nothing but trouble. But if they do want to buy that house still, I understand that the price that they are offering is extremely affordable. If they still want to buy it though, I hope that the owners would cleanse that house. Oh, I started to have goosebumps. The part where the wife just jammed her head into the gap as his husband, opened the door. That and the part where the wife gave chase as he was about to close the door is something I can imagine as well. Luckily though, he was able to close the door in time. I have a couple more stories on stigmatized property of course, but I think we shall save the rest for other episodes to come. Now, I'd like to remind everyone that the stories you listen are just for entertainment purposes only. Don't go and believe every single story that you hear, because I'm actually quite afraid of what some of you might do if you take it too seriously. I don't want to see you guys, on the internet being caught on camera doing some sketchy rituals or practices, to ward off evil spirits. Don't. Just don't, guys, okay? Just go about your life as per normal. Alright, and just continue to do as you do. Don't need to worry, okay? Alright. Anyway, the next story takes place in a forested area. This one is from Wahid, and he says, I went on a hiking trip somewhere in Malaysia with my friends. We went up a steep slope of the hill, and when we reached the midpoint, I was feeling exhausted. I decided that I'd stay for a while to rest up while the others go on ahead, and would catch up in a minute or so. However, things took a terrible turn when I tried to catch up with them. The title to this email is quite interesting. The title to this story is Falling on Deaf Ears. Let's listen to his tale.
Sinister Tales.
Son, remember, if you ever find yourself stuck in a place, going in circles, and can't find the exit, there's a chance your vision has been blocked by the spirits. Then, what should I do, Dad? Do not panic and stay calm. Recite these prayers I've taught you. God wills it, you will make it out unscathed and be able to find your exit. These were the words my father used to tell me a long time ago. From young, I was taught by my dad on matters of religion and spirituality. I've experienced and seen my fair share of things which cannot be explained, and till this day, I hold the skills my father taught me dearly. He has saved me from countless of times from the pesky annoyance of the spirits that wanted to play tricks on me. Such an example is this story for you. We've been hiking all morning and was halfway through our destination. We climbed the hill and reached the midsection when I couldn't take it anymore. Guys, we've been hiking for a while now. Is it okay if we rest up for a while? Yeah, good idea. Let's drink up and sit in the shade here. The others, whom had more stamina, were used to the hiking, didn't feel the need, but I appreciated their understanding and concern for me. We sat in the cool shade for about 30 minutes. As we rested up, we chatted on various matters to pass the time. The atmosphere was lively and we were all enjoying the camaraderie. Laughter filled the air, and when our belly ached and tears streamed down from our faces, the leader of the group decided it was time to make a move on. I had taken out my boots earlier because I was feeling hot and bothered. Hey, you guys go on ahead first. I'll catch up soon after. Nah, we can wait. La, it's only for a while. Go on, I'll catch up. Won't take long. You sure? Yes, just go on, I'll catch up. The others all nodded to each other and walked off. I took my time to wear my boots and tie my shoelaces. During this time, I had my head down all the way, focusing on wearing my boots, so my vision was solely on the boots. So I had no vision or knowledge on where my friends were going, but since there's a pathway, I assumed they were following the path anyway. It was probably about a minute or so, and I was done wearing my boots, so when I looked up, I expected to see them just about in the distance, not too far from me. However, I was really surprised to see them extremely far from me. These guys, I told them to go on, but I didn't tell them to leave me behind. Hey, guys, wait up! I ran up to them as quickly as I can. The others by then have disappeared from view as the last person climbed up the hill further and my vision was obscured due to the height difference and the foliage of the trees. I finally reached the place where I had last seen them and was scanning to see where they had gone. Then I saw the same person over the distance, but instead of following the pathway, he veered into the forest. I was puzzled. I was sure we were heading to the top of the hill, so why did the group went off to an unknown track? Not one to question since I was already behind, I ran up to them to catch up for fear of losing them for real this time. As I entered the forest, I didn't spot any of my friends and ventured deeper in a straight line thinking that I would probably see them sooner or later. However, 5 minutes passed, then 10 minutes passed. I've been walking in a straight line all this while and I didn't know where I was going, so I stopped in my tracks and assessed the situation. I began to call my friends, but there was no one to respond back. I was thinking that I might have lost them already, as they may have ventured deeper into the forest. Fearing that I may lose my way, I decided to turn back to the trail and wait for them at the entrance of the midsection of the hill. They'd have to pass by that area if they want to go back anyway. Since I didn't want to lose my way in the forest, I might as well just wait for them at the last known location. That way, they'll be forced to find me when they realize I've been missing for quite some time. So, I turned around and headed back. I walked for about 10 minutes, then 15. However, I wasn't out of the woods. A wave of questions began to hover on my mind, but I held it off. I thought, I'll reach the trail soon enough. However, after 30 minutes passed, I still have yet to reach the trail. My pace was the same and I hadn't taken any turn anywhere. I just ventured straight. So it makes sense that I just need to turn around 180 degrees and just walk straight back, right? Did I make a mistake somewhere? Can't be. It's impossible to make a mistake. I kept walking and it was then I started to notice the intricate details of the forest. One of which was this particular huge log with mushrooms on it. When I looked at it the first time, it seemed normal. Then as I walked and walked, I would see the same log again with the mushrooms on it. Paying no heed, I continued my journey again, and then I started to notice the same log with mushrooms. Hang on, that log. Why do I feel like I've seen that before? It was then I realized that I've been walking in circles. Or rather, it feels like I was walking in a loop, an endless loop, where after a certain point I reached back to my last checkpoint. I felt like those games where they don't allow your character to trace back and you're forced to go further on a linear adventure. Fear and panic started to sink in. 1,001 questions began to flood my mind. They all point to one thing though. Will I make it back home safe? I stopped and began to assess my surroundings once more, but I felt hopeless, since if I was in an endless loop, there was no point in assessing anything at all. I'm basically doomed. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a shadowy figure in the distance to my right. It was within my peripheral vision, and I turned around to look at it, thinking it might be my friends trying to find me. However, as I looked, the shadowy figure quickly hid behind the tree. I continued to observe it, and finally the head peeked out just a little, and what I saw was horrifying. Though only for a split second, it looked like an elderly woman in her late 80s. Her face was full of wrinkles and hair was unkempt and bushy. Her face was extremely creepy as well. Some may think that it was probably an old lady that lived around the area. Maybe if there was a village nearby. However, before I went on this hiking trip, all of us were aware that this place did not have any village nearby. The rough terrain didn't allow people to live here unless they were to be cut off from society. I started to feel slightly scared since I have an unwanted guest that was observing me, and that the feeling was bolstered by the fact that I had no idea what her motive was. Then, my memories from young kicked in. Son, remember, if you ever find yourself stuck in a place, going in circles, and can't find the exit, there's a chance your vision has been blocked by the spirits. Do not panic and stay calm. Recite these prayers I've taught you. God wills it, you will make it out unscathed and be able to find your exit. Thinking back, maybe this was the spirit that resides in this forest. Perhaps it was also the one that obscured my vision from viewing the exit. I may appear to walk in a straight line, but perhaps she must have done something to twist my vision. I calmed myself down by taking slow, deep breaths. Usually, I would close my eyes, but since the old lady was watching me from a distance, I didn't want to take any chances. If she crept up to me while my eyes were closed, who knows where she might be next and what she might do. When my heart rate had dropped to a steady pace, I then began to recite the prayers that was taught to my dad. I didn't say out loud, of course, just the whisper, which was loud enough for me to hear. Then from a distance I could hear the growling and hissing of the old lady. She was saying, which translated to shut up, shut up. I ignored her demands and continued to recite the prayers, and when I finished, the old lady stopped hiding from behind the trees and stepped out. I expected her to step out like a normal person, but no. She was on all fours with her tongue jutting out. She was making these hideous growling sounds, and then she scurried away as if she was afraid. Not taking any chances of being entrapped again, I continued to recite the prayers again and again, and proceeded to walk in the direction I came from. It wasn't long before I finally reached the trail again. I went by the midsection of the hill, and to my relief, my friends were already there. Wait, where were you? I thought you said you were going to fall behind. I did, and then I saw Farid over here took a turn to the right, entering the forest, away from the trail. Farid looked surprised and said, No, we all followed the trail. None of us went to the forest. What on earth are you talking about? But I really saw you walk right into it. I'm telling you, okay, I did not walk into the forest. None of us did. The rest can vouch for me. I looked at Farid's face, and then to the rest. They were all being serious. Then, who was the one that I saw that looked like Farid? Who was the old lady that was behind the tree? Was it an actual spirit that resided in the forest? Or was it some old lady that lived in solitary? What was her motive? I'm not sure. All I know was that I'm glad that I got out of that forest. Yes. This one was a classic. There's always a lot of stories about people who went on hiking trips somewhere in the mountainous or forested region and then they got lost. They walk in an endless loop and can't find their way out. It's either they claim that they were following their friend who suddenly veered away from trail, or they felt like they were in a trance to take a different route. In any case, I'm glad our friend here got out safely and nothing happened to him. Who knows what might happen if he wasn't able to get out of the forest. Well, It looks like we've actually reached the end of tonight's program. That is most unfortunate. What's that? One more story? Huh. Well, I guess I could tell you one more tale. One more. You know what? Yeah, sure, why not? One for the road, as they say. Well, this one's from Mimi. It reads, I was in one of the performing arts club in secondary school for my CCA or co-curricular activity. We had a camp that fateful day, which was based in school, and back then every CCA dreamed of conducting their own night walk to scare their friends and juniors. We were all thrilled when our club gets to have our own CCA camp and were allowed to conduct night walk. The seniors and I would divide ourselves into guides and ghost actors. Juniors were required to go to a specific location to solve a puzzle that was there, and if they solve it correctly, they will be given a clue to point out to their next destination. Anyway, at about 8 p.m, all the ghost actors have prepared themselves with their costumes and makeup and have proceeded to await their designated location. There was some last-minute briefing that I hadn't done and had to go to each of their locations specifically to let them know about it. I'd gone to every single location except for the last one, which was a school hall located at the second story. I climbed the grand staircase leading to the second story and made my way to the link bridge connecting the corridor to the school hall. Upon arriving outside the school hall, I found that the shutters were closed but not completely, as there was a gap. So I lifted up the shutters slightly in order for me to bend down and enter. The school hall was dark and quiet. At that point in time, I wasn't thinking of anything eerie, as I knew there was one ghost actor at this location. I called out to the actor, Nora? Oh, Nora. Oi! I need to do one last minute briefing. Come out! I was looking around the hall for any sign of Nora. And then, I saw a glimpse of a white figure on stage. I looked over and waved at her to come over. So she came over. However, I didn't notice this at first, but when she came over to me, she looked elegant. Normally when you walk, whilst wearing a dress, you can see the person's leg taking one step in front by the vigorous movement of the cloth, right? The dress seemed to not move at all. It was as if she was floating. It became very obvious when she had to climb down some mini set of stairs from the stage, and I noticed like her legs didn't brush against her dress. However, I ignored it and thought perhaps the dress was too large or had too much space for the leg to brush against the dress. That's why there was not much movement. As Nora got closer, I started to be astounded by a sudden increase in height. She was tall. Taller than usual. She was actually similar to my height level of 165 cm. However, that night, she felt like she was about 180 cm. I was surprised but thought maybe she wore some sort of elevated shoes to give off an intimidating figure. I even had the cheek to comment, "Hey, you really look like the real thing eh? Very scary." I even got the chills when I saw you from afar. Hey, anyway, I needed to brief you on some things. I then proceeded to brief her on the last minute details. Okay, over here I'm not sure what kind of details she went over with this supposedly Nora, but I'm gonna act out, right? Hey, make sure you don't go overboard when scaring the juniors. I understand that it's hard to resist, but okay, make sure you give them a chance to run and survive from your attack, alright? Fun is important, but safety takes priority. You understand? Nox. When I gave that briefing, Nora seemed to have this very deep growl, and she also seemed to have this very hissy breath as well. Hey, Nora, you okay or not? You don't have to start acting right now, you know. Relax. Okay, I know you have to get into character, but, you know, you understood what I said earlier, right? But she just continued to growl and breathe heavily. Nora, you can relax or not? You understood what I said, right? Okay, I better get back. I'll see you in a bit, okay? As I left the hall, I felt shivers down my spine as I thought how Nora seemed to be really into the character. Then, as I walked a few paces out of the hall, from the opposite end of the link bridge, I saw Nora. I froze up, unable to move and utter anything. If that's Nora, who was inside the hall? Fear inched its way to my heart and spread all across my body. I finally broke out of my inability to move as if placed under spell and ran towards Nora. Nora looked at me weirdly and said, "Whoa, slow down. What happened? You see a ghost? Hey, not funny, okay? Whoa, relax. It was a joke. Okay, it was just a joke." "Well, it wasn't a funny joke nonetheless. I thought you were inside." "What? No. I was preparing my makeup. It took longer than I expected because I was alone. So, what happened?" I really thought you were inside. When I called your name, you responded and came down from the stage. Then I gave you some briefing and you responded to me as if, like normal. But you were so in character that I thought, your low growl and your hissing was normal. Hey, Mimi, no one is supposed to be in the hall right now, Only our CCA booked that place. And I'm the only person who was supposed to be stationed here. Are you okay or not? Who was the one you spoke to earlier? Suddenly, the shutter to the hall slammed shut behind us. We turned around, then looked at each other. Let's, let the others know that the hall is out of bounds. Yeah, good idea. Well, that was pretty interesting. Mimi's reaction was actually pretty normal. The entire time she thought she was talking to Nora, but in actual fact, it's something else. But I think for me, the red flag would be the sudden illogical height difference. Even with an elevated shoes, I don't think someone who is of 165 centimeters would be, would suddenly jump to 180 centimeters. Like, what type of elevated shoes are you wearing, to get that height? And I don't think you can really walk properly with, that much of a height increase, So yeah, so it doesn't make sense. So even if you did wear an elevated shoe, you probably tower at about 170 centimeters or so. You won't really reach 180 centimeters. Yeah, so I might be wrong. Who knows? But yeah, the growl and the hissing sound should also raise a concern if it was me, because, normal people won't really get into, they will get into character, but I don't think, for a secondary school student or a high school student to really get into character, that's very, very rare. And it's certainly strange, for someone to be, you could argue the fact that, who knows, maybe there's someone who's passionate. I don't know. If you know Nora, if you know that person well enough, you probably would know that they may or may not be excited to be, I believe they're all excited, but I don't think they would put in that much effort into getting to character way, way early on. Yeah, so if you know that person very well, it certainly would also help to deduce whether it's really that person or not. Yeah. But imagine if in the middle of all the briefing, Mimi suddenly realized, hey, this probably isn't Nora. Nora is not the type of person to do this type of stuff. And what should Mimi do then? She's stuck with the ghost, right? So, like, what now? Would the ghost suddenly say, "You already know who I am, so why are you standing here?" I have no idea. If I were to be in her position and, suddenly deduce, her brain activity just, started working, all the neurons started to connect the dots, and then suddenly, this might not be Nora. She won't do these type of things. Oh, what now? What should Mimi do? Run? What if that thing just grabbed Mimi's hands and say, "Where are you going?" I'll leave the imagination of what happened next to you. Even I do not know what's the outcome if she were to run away, or if she were to discover that that was Nora in the middle of the briefing. Well, it has been fun, because we've reached the end for tonight's program. I hoped you all enjoy tonight's tales. And remember this golden rule. The stories that are being told here are only meant for entertainment purposes only. Do not take them too seriously, and I'll see all of you in the next episode. Bye-bye, and fair winds.